My parents cancelled my 18th birthday for my sister's tantrum, so I quietly moved out and watched their perfect life fall apart without me. I just turned 18 3 days ago, but unfortunately, my parents cancelled my party at the very last minute because my spoiled older sister Amanda demanded it. To be honest, she wasn't even supposed to be here for the celebration, and I was genuinely relieved about that fact. But it's just my luck that the day she was supposed to leave Phoenix, all flights got cancelled because of severe thunderstorms across the Southwest. She was supposed to fly to Los Angeles with her college friends for some influencer event she'd been planning for months. Instead, they had to postpone everything, and she'd been absolutely miserable about it, which meant my parents had been walking on eggshells around her because they really didn't want to upset their precious golden child. She's always been the favorite in our family, and they'd do anything to avoid her wrath. So much so that on the morning of my birthday, she marched into the kitchen and demanded that my party be cancelled. Her exact words? "If I can't have fun, then neither should she." And of course, my parents didn't even hesitate. They immediately started sending cancellation messages to every single person who'd been invited to my party, my friends, our relatives, everyone. The worst part? I had no idea any of this was happening. I spent the entire day excited, helping Mom arrange the decorations we'd bought at Target, setting up the backyard with string lights and balloons. I even made my favorite chocolate chip cookies from scratch, the recipe Grandma Rose had taught me years ago. Everything looked perfect under the desert sunset. As evening approached, I kept checking my phone, expecting texts from my friends asking about parking or what time to arrive. But my phone stayed silent. By 7 o'clock, when nobody had shown up, I started getting worried. By 8, I was confused. By 9, I was panicking. "Mom, Dad," I called out, finding them in the living room watching some Netflix show like nothing was wrong. "Where is everyone? Did something happen?" That's when they finally told me. They'd cancelled my 18th birthday party, the one milestone I'd been looking forward to for months, without even asking me. All because Amanda was upset about her stupid LA trip. The rage that built up inside me was unlike anything I'd ever felt before. This wasn't just about one party. This was about 18 years of being treated like I didn't matter, of always coming second to my sister's needs and wants. And this was just the beginning of how everything would unravel. I completely lost my composure and started screaming at my parents. How could they do this to me? It was supposed to be my special day, my 18th birthday, my official entrance into adulthood. They'd been the ones who suggested throwing a big celebration in the first place, who'd helped me plan everything, who'd insisted we invite all our extended family from Tucson and Flagstaff. "You don't understand," Mom said, wringing her hands nervously. "Amanda is just so devastated about her trip. We didn't think it would be appropriate to have a party when she's in such a fragile emotional state." Fragile? I shouted back. "She's 23 years old. I'm the one turning 18, and you cancelled my party for her tantrum." My parents had always treated Amanda differently, always more gently, always prioritizing her feelings over mine. Throughout my childhood, I was expected to give up the last slice of pizza if Amanda wanted it, to let her choose what we watched on TV, to never wear the same style of clothes she liked because it might upset her personal aesthetic. I got her hand-me-downs while she got shopping trips to Scottsdale Fashion Square. But this crossed every line I'd ever drawn in my mind. "Keep your voice down," Dad warned, glancing toward the stairs. "You'll wake up Amanda." She finally managed to take a nap. That made me even angrier. Even now, even in the middle of ruining my birthday, they were more concerned about disturbing their precious daughter than addressing what they'd done to me. I found out later that they'd told everyone I was sick with a severe migraine and specifically requested that nobody contact me until the next day. That's why my phone had been so quiet. My friends actually thought they were being considerate by giving me space to recover. The manipulation was breathtaking. As I continued yelling, expressing 18 years of frustration and hurt, Amanda came downstairs in her silk pajamas, looking perfectly rested and smug. "What's all this noise about?" she asked innocently, like she didn't know exactly what was happening. When I told her how selfish and entitled she was being, she had the audacity to lecture me about empathy and consideration. "I'm going through something really difficult right now," she said, flipping her highlighted hair over her shoulder. "If you can't see how heartless it would be to have a party while I'm suffering, then you're more spoiled than I thought." That's when I snapped completely. I lunged at her, grabbing her perfectly styled hair, and we ended up in a full-blown physical fight right there in our Scottsdale living room. Our parents had to pull us apart, and that's when we heard the doorbell ring. None of us had heard it during the chaos, but someone was at our front door. And that someone was about to change everything. When Dad opened the door, my grandfather stood there, all 6 feet of distinguished presence, wearing his usual pressed khakis and polo shirt. Grandpa William had always been the family patriarch, the one person everyone respected and slightly feared. Even my parents straightened their postures when he walked into a room. "What in the hell is going on here?" he demanded, looking at my disheveled appearance and Amanda's messed up hair. I could hear shouting from the driveway. Usually, I would never tell anyone about the way my parents treated me. The constant favoritism seemed too petty to complain about, and I'd learned to keep family business private. But something about this moment, my cancelled birthday, Amanda's smirk, my parents' complete indifference to my feelings, broke something inside me. So I told Grandpa William everything. Not just about tonight, but about years of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own home. About always having to sacrifice for Amanda's comfort. About never being allowed to outshine the golden child, about feeling invisible in my own family. The look on my grandfather's face shifted from confusion to shock to absolute fury. "Is this true?" he asked my parents sharply. Before they could answer, he continued, "Because if it is, then you've been lying to me for years about how you're raising these girls." That's when I learned something that changed my entire understanding of our family dynamics. Grandpa William revealed that he'd been sending my parents money every month for the past 3 years. Their small accounting firm in Tempe had been struggling, and they'd been on the verge of bankruptcy multiple times. My grandfather had been quietly keeping us afloat financially. Even my birthday party, the one they just cancelled, had been paid for entirely by him. "I've been supporting this family because I thought you were raising both girls with love and fairness," he said, his voice getting dangerous. But clearly, I was wrong. Amanda, being the absolute fool she is, decided this was the perfect time to argue with our grandfather. She explained how traumatizing it was that her Los Angeles trip had been cancelled, how she couldn't possibly be expected to watch other people celebrate when she was in such emotional pain. Grandpa William looked at her like she'd just spoken in a foreign language. "You think the world revolves around you, don't you?" he said quietly. "You think your 23-year-old tantrum is more important than your sister's 18th birthday?" The silence in our living room was deafening. Then my grandfather delivered the words that would change everything. "I'm done supporting this family. You're on your own now." He turned to me. "Aviana, go pack your bags. You're coming with me." The chaos that erupted after Grandpa William's announcement was something I'd never seen before. My parents immediately forgot all about me and started frantically trying to negotiate with my grandfather, begging him not to withdraw his financial support. "Dad, please, let's talk about this rationally," my father pleaded, following Grandpa William around our living room. "Maybe we made some mistakes, but we can work this out. We can change," Mom added desperately. "We didn't realize how it looked from the outside." But my grandfather wasn't listening to their bargaining. He was focused entirely on me. "Aviana, do you want to come live with me?" he asked directly. "Because I can see now that this environment isn't healthy for you." I didn't hesitate for a second. Yes. What struck me most was that even as my parents begged Grandpa William to reconsider cutting off their money, neither of them tried to convince me to stay. They weren't upset about losing me, they were upset about losing his financial support. It was the final confirmation that everything he'd said about their priorities was absolutely correct. I ran upstairs and quickly packed my essential belongings: clothes, my laptop, my favorite books, the few pieces of jewelry that actually belonged to me rather than being Amanda's discards. As I stuffed everything into my suitcases, I could hear the argument continuing downstairs, my parents' voices getting more desperate by the minute. When I came back down with my bags, Grandpa William was already heading toward the door. He didn't even look back at his son as we left the house I'd lived in for 18 years. "I should have done this a long time ago," he said as we drove through the familiar streets of Scottsdale toward his house in Paradise Valley. I knew something wasn't right, but I kept hoping things would improve on their own. His house felt like a sanctuary after the constant tension of living with my parents and Amanda. Grandpa William had always been successful. He'd been one of Arizona's top criminal defense attorneys before retiring, and his home reflected that success. But more importantly, it felt peaceful. "You'll stay here as long as you need," he told me that first night over dinner at his kitchen table. "Through the summer, through college if you want. Whatever you need." For the first time in years, I felt like someone actually cared about my well-being. But my parents weren't going to give up that easily. My phone started buzzing almost immediately with their attempts to get me back, not because they missed me, but because they needed me to convince Grandpa William to restore their financial lifeline. The real battle was just beginning. My parents' desperation became more obvious with every passing day. Text messages, voicemails, emails, they tried every possible way to reach me. But their apologies felt hollow and calculated, designed to manipulate me back into their lives so they could restore their relationship with Grandpa William. "We realize we made mistakes," Mom's messages read. "We always thought you were stronger and more independent than Amanda, so we focused more attention on her because she seemed to need it more. We're sorry we took your strength for granted." The excuses were infuriating. Amanda is 5 years older than me. If anything, she should have been the one mature enough to handle sharing our parents' attention. But they were trying to reframe their favoritism as somehow being a compliment to my character. After a week of ignoring their increasingly frantic messages, I finally responded. I told my father exactly what I thought of their fake apologies, how I knew they only wanted me back to restore Grandpa William's financial support, and that I was done with their manipulation forever. That's when they made their crucial mistake. "We'll do anything to make this right," Dad texted back. "Just tell us what it would take for you to come home and talk to your grandfather about giving us another chance." They shouldn't have said anything. My response was simple: I'll consider coming back if and only if Amanda moves out permanently. She's 23, she's been working for 2 years, and she should have her own place by now. If you choose her over Grandpa William's support, that tells me everything I need to know about your priorities. I had absolutely no intention of ever moving back home, regardless of what they decided. This was purely a test to see if they'd actually choose me over their precious golden child when forced to make a real decision. The silence that followed my ultimatum was telling. For days, they didn't respond at all. Meanwhile, life with Grandpa William was everything I'd been missing. He actually listened when I talked, asked about my interests, helped me research colleges and scholarship opportunities. We cooked dinner together, watched old movies, and had real conversations about my future. "You know," he said one evening as we sat on his back patio, looking out at Camelback Mountain, "I'm proud of how you handled this situation. It took courage to stand up for yourself." He also revealed more family history that my parents had never shared with me. My mother had struggled with severe depression after her parents died in a car accident when she was pregnant with me. She'd actually blamed me for their deaths, believing that her pregnancy had somehow brought bad luck to the family. "They planned to put you up for adoption," Grandpa William admitted quietly. "Your grandmother and I had to intervene to keep you with the family. But I don't think your parents ever fully accepted that you were meant to be here." Finally understanding the root of their rejection was both painful and liberating. I wasn't the problem, I never had been. But my peaceful new life was about to be disrupted by an unwelcome visitor. 2 weeks after my ultimatum, I was walking home from Chaparral High School with my friend Tyler, a linebacker on our football team who'd become my unofficial bodyguard since I told him about my family situation. As we approached the school parking lot, I spotted a familiar figure leaning against a silver Honda Civic. Amanda. My stomach immediately tensed. "Tyler," I said quietly, "can you walk me home today? I don't have a good feeling about this." Tyler nodded without question. He's built like a tank and has always been protective of his friends. More importantly, he knew the whole story about my family and understood why I might need backup. Amanda followed us silently for several blocks, staying about 20 feet behind us the entire time. The whole situation felt ominous and creepy. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore and turned around to confront her. "What do you want, Amanda?" "I need to talk to you privately," she said, glancing at Tyler with obvious disdain. "Without your little bodyguard here." "Then you're out of luck," I replied. "Because I don't want to talk to you at all." That's when she launched into her prepared speech about how much stress I was causing our parents, how my unreasonable demands were tearing the family apart, and how selfish I was being by forcing them to choose between their daughters. "Mom and Dad finally told me about your ridiculous condition," she said, her voice getting shrill. "You actually expect them to kick me out of my own home just to satisfy your jealousy? That's psychotic, Aviana." I looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. "If I can't be happy, then neither can you," I said, using her exact words from my birthday. "That's the same logic you used to cancel my party, remember?" I think it applies perfectly here. Then I turned around and started walking away with Tyler. That's when Amanda completely lost control. She started screaming at me, calling me horrible and vindictive and selfish. When I flipped her off without turning around, she must have snapped completely because the next thing I knew, I was face down on the sidewalk with her full weight on my back. Thankfully, Tyler reacted immediately. Within seconds, he'd lifted Amanda off me like she weighed nothing and was holding her at arm's length while she struggled and cursed at both of us. I was furious. The audacity of her attacking me and thinking she could get away with it was unbelievable. I walked up to her, slapped her as hard as I could across the face, and told her that if she ever tried something like that again, I'd call the police. And given how much trouble you've already caused Mom and Dad, I added, I'm sure they wouldn't appreciate dealing with assault charges on top of everything else. Even then, she tried to continue arguing, but Tyler and I just walked away. She didn't follow us after that slap. When I got home and told Grandpa William what had happened, he was ready to call the police immediately. But I convinced him it wasn't worth it. Amanda had learned her lesson, and she was already in a precarious position with our parents. I also finally told him about the condition I'd given my parents. Instead of being upset, he actually laughed and said it was brilliantly strategic. They deserve to squirm a little, he said. Let's see if they finally show you where their real priorities lie. 2 days later, we got our answer. The message from my parents came on a Thursday morning while I was eating breakfast with Grandpa William. It was short and brutally honest. We've decided to let Amanda continue living with us. You've shown us that you're not the kind of person we want influencing her. You've always been jealous and vindictive. The only reason we wanted you back was for your grandfather's financial support, but your mother's brother has agreed to become a business partner, so we don't need that anymore. We don't want you around our family anymore. I showed the message to Grandpa William, expecting him to be upset. Instead, he just shook his head and said, well, that settles that. At least now you know exactly where you stand. Honestly, I wasn't hurt by their rejection. I'd known from the beginning that they only wanted me back for the money. Having them finally admit it out loud was almost refreshing in its honesty. What did surprise me was the follow-up message they sent a few hours later, when my lack of response apparently got under their skin. We're blocking you now because you're a horrible, heartless, violent, and ungrateful person. After everything we did for you, feeding you, clothing you, sending you to school, you still have the nerve to act like we're bad parents. You should be thanking us for the bare minimum we provided instead of complaining about everything. Before they could block me, I blocked them first. I was done with their manipulation forever. Life moved forward beautifully after that. I got accepted to Arizona State University with a partial scholarship, and Grandpa William covered the rest of my expenses as promised. I started dating Tyler officially, and we went to prom together before graduation. The best part was watching karma work its magic on my parents and Amanda. Word spread through our extended family about why Grandpa William had cut them off, and gradually, most of Dad's relatives stopped speaking to them. Their social circle in Scottsdale began to shrink as people learned the truth about how they treated me. Mom's family still maintained contact with them, but they were isolated from the rest of our relatives. Last month, I heard through mutual friends that Amanda finally moved out and got her own apartment in Tempe. Apparently, living with our parents became unbearable once they lost their financial stability and had to downsize their lifestyle significantly. Tyler and I are still together, even though we're at different colleges now. We see each other on weekends when I drive back to Phoenix from Flagstaff, where I'm studying psychology at Northern Arizona University. I've made incredible friends here, and for the first time in my life, I feel like myself, not someone's lesser sister or unwanted burden. Grandpa William and I are closer than ever. He's become the parent I always needed, and I know I can count on him for anything. We've both made mistakes and learned from them, but our relationship is built on mutual respect and genuine love. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if my parents had just apologized sincerely after my 18th birthday, if they'd actually tried to change their behavior instead of manipulating me back into their lives. But honestly, I'm grateful things worked out exactly as they did. I'm finally free, finally valued, and finally living the life I deserve. And I've never been happier.